Hi, everybody. My name is Dustin Rawls, and I work for THEC TSAC, the state of Tennessee. My job is to help graduating seniors and their families get ready for college, getting their finances in order for college. So, we're going to spend a few minutes talking about what it looks like to get college ready financially. And so, let me share my screen as we get started, and we're going to plow through this together. I'm going to make no assumptions that everybody knows things or some of you not know things. We're all going to jump off of the same place together. So when we're talking about money for college, financial aid is any and all money for college given to you. It's not just the free money from the federal government. A lot of people think that financial aid is the Pell Grant system, and the Pell Grant is a type of aid, but it is not the end all be all of financial aid. So there are actually four different types of aid. You've got scholarships, which is a type of aid based off of a merit. That's an ACT, a GPA, an essay. You did something really well academically, and somebody out there says, "Hey, you did well enough, good job, and here's some free money for school." Then you've got grants, which is free money from the federal government or state government based off of financial need in your household. So the most common type of grant is the federal Pell Grant. That is the FAFSA that I'll talk a lot more about as we move forward. Students submit the FAFSA depending on the answer that the FAFSA gives you is whether or not you're going to be eligible for the federal Pell Grant, but that money is freely given to you based off of financial aid, and for you to use in school. Then you've got loans. Loans is exactly like it sounds. It's money that you borrow to use for school with the intent to repay after you graduate. And then, of course, you've got the federal work study program, which is my personal favorite there at the number 4 slot. Federal Work Study Program is where you work on a college campus about 10 hours a week, and you make about $1,000 a semester. It is a college job, so it is the you submit your hours to the school submits your hours to the federal government pays the school pays you. That's how the system works. And they typically it's Monday through Friday, 8 to 4:30. You work around your class schedule. I worked on a university for about 10 years. Had a work study student work for me every year. It's a great way to make a little bit extra money if you need a little bit to make ends meet. If you're interested in the federal work study program, you must go to the financial aid office at the institution you're going to attend or are attending and tell them that you're interested in participating in the federal work study program. They'll take all your information, they'll put it on a list, and depending on where you fall on that list is whether or not you'll get selected for the program. If you're selected for the program, the school's financial aid office will do their best job to place you in a job that is within your academic discipline. In other words, if you're a nursing student, there may be a half a dozen nursing federal work study jobs on campus, and they will try their best to place nursing students in those nursing job positions. It doesn't always work out that way, and sure, there are students that get placed in jobs that have nothing to do with their academic discipline, but they try just so that way it kind of helps and falls naturally for the student. But it doesn't always work out that way. Just know that they do their best. So couldn't recommend that program enough. If you are interested, make sure you do stop by and tell the financial aid office at the school you're going to or are currently attending. So those are the four types of aid. Where does all that money come from? You've got the federal government. That's first. The federal government has a thing called the FAFSA. I'm sure you've all heard of it. The FAFSA is an acronym that stands for Free Application for Federal Student Aid. FAFSA is nothing more than a great big old math problem. You and your parents or you all will submit financial information to the FAFSA. It takes all that information, puts in a bunch of other stuff that you list in there, and it spits out an answer. That answer is then going to tell you whether or not you're going to be eligible to receive Pell Grant money, the free money from the federal government. I'll tell you more about the answer and the ranges of the answer coming up, but just know that the first place financial aid comes from is the federal government. That's the first stop. So much so that in Tennessee, the two primary scholarships that most graduates, kind of revolve around are Tennessee Promise and the Hope Scholarship. I want to be perfectly clear when I say this out of the gate that even if you're Tennessee Promise eligible or Hope Scholarship eligible, you cannot and you will not receive those scholarships unless you submit the FAFSA. The FAFSA is a requirement for you to receive Tennessee Promise or the Hope Scholarship. Just know that up front. The other thing I do want to mention here is just kind of the distinctions, a few of them between Tennessee Promise and the Hope Scholarship. Tennessee Promise is only used towards students pursuing the associate's degree or technical certificate at one of our TCATs, Tennessee Colleges of Applied Technology. So Tennessee Promise can only be used towards students pursuing an associate's degree or technical certificate at one of our TCATs. Tennessee Promise is 3 years or 6 semesters or until you earn the associate's degree or until you transfer to a non-promise institution or you leave the institution. But when you start, you will have it through earning the associates or leaving school. The Hope Scholarship is 5 calendar years or 10 consecutive semesters. Hope can be used at the community college and four-year institutions. Hope is not for the TCATs. There's a different scholarship for there that I'll explain coming up. And so Hope is the one that you have to earn with either an ACT of a 21 or a 3.0 GPA. Those are not requirements for Promise, and I'll tell you more about Promise requirements coming up. But those are kind of the distinctions between the two. But just know as we're just diving into the sources of financial aid, that you cannot, will not receive Promise or Hope without submitting the FAFSA first. So you got the FAFSA up front, that's the federal Pell Grant system. You've got the state aid below that, that's your Promise and Hope scholarships and other tertiary scholarships that we have in the state. And then you've got two different other scholarship categories up here. You've got private scholarships on the right and institutional or college scholarships on the left. Let's go to private scholarships first. On the right, there tends to be kind of two types of private scholarships. You've got your larger national scholarships, like your Chick-fil-A, your Coca-Cola, those kinds of scholarships. Then you have your more local scholarships, your Boy Scouts, Girl Scouts, credit unions, those kinds of things. As you're applying for scholarships, whether it's the larger national ones or the more local ones, you need to research and understand all the terms applicable to the scholarships that you're applying for. So you need to begin familiarizing yourself with, is the scholarship that you're applying for, is it recurring or non-recurring? If it's recurring, what are the stipulations for you to maintain the scholarship? If it's non-recurring, are you eligible to reapply for it immediately, or do they sit you out for a cycle because you were just awarded the scholarship? If it's recurring, how often does it recur? Does it recur semesterally, annually? If it's non-recurring, when does it end? Does it end after a semester, after a year? So you'll get more and more familiar with these terms as you go throughout them, but just know that you need to do your homework to understand what it is that you're applying for, and if you're awarded it, what are the award terms and stipulations to have earned it and to maintain it, or if you don't, what does it look like on the back end? So that's private. Additionally, on the other side, you've got college scholarships. This is your University of Tennessee scholarships, your MTSU scholarships, your Tennessee Tech scholarships, your Austin Peay scholarships. Once you've been admitted to those schools, you then can apply for institutional scholarships. Let me say that differently. You cannot apply for Vanderbilt scholarships until you've been admitted to Vanderbilt. All right. Each of those institutions will require you to have a student ID before they will allow you to apply for institutional or college scholarships. So just know that up front. There's another research underneath the college one. This one is meant to inform you that there is no state mandate from us at our level to have one college application date for scholarships. We don't tell the colleges when to do that, can't mandate that. So it is different for every school. So you research on there as men, you need to know when, if you're looking at 3 different schools, you need to know all 3 schools' scholarship deadlines so you don't miss it. If you've already narrowed it down to one school, great. You need to make sure you have looked up that school scholarship deadline so that you don't miss it. Typically speaking, all four-year schools will have a scholarship deadline sometime this fall semester. So it's, as of today, it'll be sometime, it's September. As of today, scholarship deadlines will begin probably expiring right around the corner. Also, the more competitive the institution you're interested in attending, likely the earlier the scholarship deadline. So I don't have them all memorized. I don't know them. I will never know them. But if you're interested in a highly competitive institution in state and even out of state, the more competitive the institution, likely the earlier their scholarship deadline. So you're going to want to know when they are so you don't miss them, because those systems are so big, so many students applying for the money, that if you've missed the deadline, you've missed the deadline. You also need to know that there are some schools that have a one scholarship application, which means you submit one application and it automatically applies you for every institutional scholarship for which you're eligible for. The other one, the other reverse of that is that schools don't have a one app for scholarships, and you actually have to manually look up all the different types of scholarships you could be eligible for and apply for those individually. So It's your federal scholarships or your federal money from the FAFSA, your state scholarships, and then you've got private and institutional scholarships. Two things I do want to mention on this slide before we move forward is first, if you know you need additional money for school and because you're attending a highly competitive institution or your family doesn't have all the resources to help pay for tuition. That money typically doesn't come from the Pell Grant, and that money doesn't come from the state. Those pies of money are very large, but your slice is really small. So between now and when you graduate, it needs to be one of your high school jobs to apply for as many scholarships as you can. So that way, by the time you graduate, if you apply for 2 to 3 scholarships a week, when the time you graduate, you'll have applied for 30 to 45 scholarships, and if 10% of those hit at about $1,000 a piece, you're looking at an additional $3,000 to $4,000 per year in scholarship money that you have available to you that if you didn't do that. I can't tell you how many thousands of dollars go in scholarship money go unawarded every year because students don't apply for scholarships. So just make sure that you haven't left money on the table because of you not applying for scholarships. So take the time, make it your job to make sure that you have not left money out there that you could have applied for, and make that one of your jobs. Um, I think that's it I wanted to mention for sources and some tips and tricks. So let's keep on going. Everybody likes checklists. I'm not going to touch on all of these. I will say that the first one's quite important. You need to do what's necessary to make yourself Hope Scholarship eligible by the time you graduate. That's either by earning a 21 on your ACT. That's a one-time test score. That is not a super score. So just make sure to become eligible for the Hope Scholarship. That's a one-time test score. Or you have a 3.0 unweighted GPA. The state uses unweighted GPAs for Hope Scholarship. So either one of those will get you to where you need to be. So just make sure that you have gotten to one of those goals. If you have, then just know that the total potential payout for the Hope Scholarship is over $26,000 for the life of that scholarship. So, highly recommend you do what's necessary to get there. Make sure you get there. The Hope Scholarship is a big deal. So make sure you've gotten there with either the ACT or the GPA. Apply to several schools, sure. The Tennessee Promise deadline, and I'll tell you more about Tennessee Promise on another slide, but there is a deadline for the application for Tennessee Promise. That is November the 1st. This is one of those, again, if you miss the deadline date, if you miss it, you're out. You will render yourself ineligible for Tennessee Promise. So don't do that. Make sure you've met the deadline for Tennessee Promise. Next two bullet points are talking about FSA IDs and the FAFSA. I'll just say that the FAFSA is going live December 1st. That's on another slide, and I'll come back around and talk more about FSA IDs and the FAFSA in a few minutes. The FAFSA deadline, looking forward to spring 2025, is April 15th, 2025. Again, if you miss the FAFSA deadline of April the 15th, you will become Tennessee Promise ineligible. So you can be Hope Scholarship eligible and submit your FAFSA after April 15th and still receive it. But if you've missed the April 15th deadline, that is Tennessee Promise. You've forfeited and you will not be eligible to receive it. All right. Um, you can see the other bullet points and follow up, but those are just kind of, I want to touch on those as we spend some time together, or you're listening or watching this on your own. Cost of attendance. Whenever I get to this screen in public, everybody kind of, there's some big dollar figures up on the screen. When I talk about cost of attendance, of course I worry about the money, but I'm not here to worry you with the money. I'm here to make sure you're actually prepared for what's going to be expected come fall 2025 when you go to school. So by federal law, every university or college, every institution has to list their annual estimated cost of attendance on their school's website. So I'm going to choose this first column on your screen. That's the one on the left. That's the two-year public institutions. That says the community college. We know that typical community college tuition is $2,500 a semester in Tennessee. So that's $5,000 a year. If you know you have $3,000 coming in grant money, and you've got $2,000 coming in scholarships, you know you've got $5,000 coming in to cover your tuition and fees. This chart will tell you, if you go all the way down to the total at the bottom, that it's telling you that if you have $5,000 coming in and you got $5,000 going out for tuition and fees, you might not have enough for school. So some of you may be living at home, they're going to community college, some of you may not be. So they're estimating that it actually costs you $10,000 a year out of pocket to go to the school, to cover everything: tuition, fees, room, board, meals, insurance, utilities, life expenses, et cetera, et cetera. That's what it costs to be a student over the course of a year. So this is important note to tell you as you are comparing costs for school and being a consumer. You need to know that what the annual estimated cost of attendance is, and you can do that by going to the university or college's website that you're attending. Look that up on the financial aid page, or you can go to collegefortn.org. It's our state website there at the bottom. We have all of our institutions listed on one page, and you can look and see what all their estimated costs of attendances are to be able to quickly compare them. And you just need to know that you want to know what the annual estimated cost of attendance is, and for community college it's $10,000 a year. So you need to then take that 10,000, subtract out your $3,000 in grant money, your $2,000 in scholarships. So they're telling you're $5,000 short. And how you're going to account for that money. Was it going to be a job? Is it going to be, family? Is it going to be savings? How are you going to do it to make up the difference? So make sure you're really prepared for what's going to be expected to come out of your pocket to cover everything before you go into school next fall. All right, that being said, what does the money really look like at four-year institutions? On your screen, you have different kinds of columns. Two of them, you've got pink columns and blue columns. Pink columns are money based off of a financial need, and blue column is based off of a merit. You did something well and somebody gives you some free money. So we're going to go left to right, make sure you understand how all this works. So first, you've got the federal Pell Grant. That is the FAFSA that's on your left. As I've mentioned, the FAFSA is nothing more than a big math problem. When you do the FAFSA spits out a number at the end. That number is called a student aid index. That number will reside somewhere between negative 1,500 to as big as you can imagine. All right. In Tennessee, or if not in Tennessee, in FAFSA in general, if you're somewhere between negative 1,500 and zero, you are called what's full Pell, which means you're going to get the full benefit of the federal Pell Grant system for school. If your number somewhere, your student aid index, if your number is somewhere between negative 1,500 and zero, you're full Pell and you're going to receive approximately $3,700 a semester for school. All right, that's the first column on the left. Additionally, if you are full Pell in Tennessee, the next column is the TSAA supplement, which means if you're going to a four-year public institution, Tennessee is going to automatically send an additional $1,000 a semester to your school on your behalf. If you are going to a private institution, we're going to send an extra $2,000 to that school on your behalf. There's no additional application you need to submit here. There is no paperwork. If you've submitted the FAFSA and you're full Pell eligible, then the supplement right next to it will automatically be sent to your school on your behalf. All right. There in the middle, we have the Hope Scholarship. That is the 21 or the 3.0 to earn it. If you have the 21 or 3.0, the payout for your freshman and sophomore year is $2,250 a semester at $4,500 a year. That bumps up to $2,850 for your junior, senior, and super senior year before you graduate. So just know that that is the one, again, that is based off an ACT of 21 or GPA of 3.0. If you're receiving the Hope Scholarship, there are two supplements over next to it that you'll be eligible for. The first is the Aspire supplement. If you have an adjusted gross income of less than $36,000, you'll receive an automatic $750 additional dollars per semester that'll be sent to your institution. Next to that, we have GAMS, which stands for the General Assembly Merit Scholarship. If you have a 29 and a 3.75 GPA, then you're an overachiever. Congratulations. We'll send an additional $500 to your school on your behalf. A couple of notes here. There is no additional paperwork or applications required like the other supplement. If you're Hope eligible and you've done the FAFSA and you've met the requirements for these, the money will be automatically sent to your school on your behalf. The last caveat is if you're the real rare person out there that is both eligible for Aspire and GAMS, you cannot receive both of them. You will only receive the higher of the two, which means only Aspire will be sent to your school. So students, if you're the one out there that is eligible for both, you can't receive both. You will only receive the higher of the two, so it will only be the $750. So you need to understand that, again, the GPA, as I've mentioned, is an unweighted GPA. Depending on who you are and where you're watching this, you could be going to a weighted institution or a weighted high school or an unweighted high school. On your transcript, if you're unweighted, your GPA is your GPA, and it will indicate as such. If your high school is weighted, and so that you have GPAs that can go above a 4.0, you'll have two different types of transcripts on your GPA. You'll have one that's called your weighted GPA, and then you'll have another one that's either called your Hope GPA, your Scholarship GPA, your unweighted GPA. So if you can't find that or you're not clear about that, make sure to have a conversation with your counselor about where you're at with your GPA, so you make sure that you're well above that 3.0 mark before you get well into your senior year. All right. Community college money looks a lot like the four-year school. So again, left to right, you've got the Pell Grant system, which is the FAFSA up front. If you're full Pell, the SAI is somewhere between negative 1,500 and zero. You're going to receive $37 a semester sent to your institution. The supplement, if you're full Pell, is additional $1,000 a semester sent to your school. Hope Scholarship's the same to earn it 3.0 or a 21 on the ACT. The payout's different at $1,600 a semester as opposed to $2,250. Aspire, if you're Hope eligible, you've got Aspire and GAMS. Aspire is the same threshold to earn it, and AGI less than $36,000. The payout's different at $250 a semester as opposed to $750. GAMS is identical, 29 and a 375. Payouts 500, and again, it's only the higher of the two if you're eligible for both. The difference is on this slide compared to the other slide is if you have any tuition and fees left over that you're responsible for after all these other types have hit your account, Tennessee Promise will pay the difference at the end and you'll have a zero balance. All right? You'll have a zero balance. TCATs operate on trimesters as opposed to semesters, so the dollars look a little different, but dollar for dollar, semester for semester, or term versus term, the money, it equates out. So you got the Pell Grant first, that's the FAFSA. If you're full Pell, that payout's $21.65 per trimester. If you're full Pell, the supplement from TSAA is an additional $667 per trimester sent to your institution. As I mentioned earlier, there is no Hope Scholarship at TCATs. TCAT has what's called Wilder NAFE. That is the Hope Scholarship of TCAT. Essentially, if you graduate with a diploma, you're Wilder NAFE eligible, and the state of Tennessee will send the Wilder NAFE Scholarship to TCAT on your behalf. All right. Lastly, you've got that Tennessee Promise column, which again stipulates if you have any money left over after all those other columns have hit your account, Tennessee Promise will kick in and pay the difference, so you have a zero balance. Okay. Here's the last slide to try to make sure you understand how all that works. An example student number one, we're looking at school, two-year schools, so it's your community colleges. That's that dotted line across the middle right there. Typical tuition at a community college, $2,500 a semester. Student number one is receiving the Hope Scholarship. They're full Pell, and that means they're getting an automatic supplement for Tennessee. So this student's receiving $1,600, $3,700, $6,300 once you add all that up together for $2,500 in tuition, which means this student's going to receive a $3,800 refund check. So hang that thought. Student number two doesn't have the Hope Scholarship, but is full Pell and getting the supplement. So this student's getting $4,700 sent to the community college for $2,500 in tuition and fees. So this student's going to receive a refund check, a $2,200 refund check. So in examples number one and two, students are getting refund checks and 2, 3, upwards of almost $4,000. If that happens to be you, your family, your situation, you need to have a conversation and understand where you're going to put that money, who has access to it, what are the stipulations for you to pull it out and use it. The worst decision you could make is to get this refund check and blow it on something that is not useful to your educational pursuit, and then you need money down the road and you don't have access to it. You don't have it. It's not there. So just know that's how it works. The school will pay you the difference above and beyond the tuition and fees if you have extra money coming in. So example number three is the one and only time that a student can and will receive both the Promise Scholarship and the Hope Scholarship in the same semester. So in example number three, the student has Hope because of the ACT or GPA, but their family makes too much money, so they're not eligible for any grant money. So Hope hits the student's account first, $1,600 a semester. So the student has a $900 difference for tuition and fees. That's when Hope kicks in and pays the difference. So example number three, this student has a zero balance for school. Last example is student didn't make any of the educational requirements, no GPA, no ACT, parents make too much money, but they're going to go to the community college. That is when Tennessee will pay the entire $2,500 in tuition and fees for the student, so they also have a zero balance. All right, those are kind of the four big examples on how the aid works and hits your account as a student. I mentioned earlier about loans. I am I feel like a father, like a dad when I talk about loans. If you're in a situation where you need to borrow money for school, I understand that that's necessary for some students and for some families. And if you're, I am an advocate for borrowing money if you are so committed to the goal of school and what it provides you and getting out. You need to understand completely what it is you're borrowing, the terms of the borrowing, the repayment, when does repayment begin, interest. You need to know all of that and be very clear on all of that before you sign the line to receive a loan, because one of the cardinal sins of school is you go to school and you pull out X amount of thousands of dollars in a student loan, and then you either leave the school or you're asked to leave the school and you have this big debt and you did not maximize your ability to pay that off in a timely manner. Now you've got to deal with it, and that's just a bad situation. And to make it worse, there's a lot of people that choose to go into default on their loans because they borrowed all this money. They don't make it near enough to pay it back, and so they're just going to walk away from it, and they wrangle that debt on somebody else. And so I hope that you choose to not make that decision. If you need a loan for school, you need to be wise steward of that money and using it appropriately, and don't waste it and make poor decisions while you're using it. So there's my dad speech. I feel like my dad every time I do it. So Tennessee Promise, there are four check marks or four um, categories up on the screen. That deadline is first, November the 1st. You miss it, you're out. You got the FAFSA deadline next. That's April 15th. You miss it, you're out. You're going to have a Tennessee Achieves or another partnering organization like AIRS, even somebody else in your county that will hold a mandatory meeting for you to receive Tennessee Promise. So you need to check with your school counselor, your school's calendar to see when that partnering organization is going to host the meeting at your institution. And if you miss that meeting, you're out. If you miss the meeting because of a school-related function, you can make the meeting up. If you miss the meeting because of some documented medical issue, you can make the meeting up. If there is a legit conflict, you can reach out to Tennessee Achieves beforehand, and they will work with you to make sure that you can get to a meeting to make yourself continued eligible. But if you're a no call, no show for the Tennessee Achieves or the AIRS or your partnering organization's meeting, then that's it. You're out. You forfeited Tennessee Promise. So make sure you don't do that. And lastly, up there, you've got complete and submit your 8 hours of community service by July 1st, 2025. You got to continue to do your hours every semester you're in school. You have to maintain a college GPA of 2.0 while you're in school. But to earn Tennessee Promise, there's no ACT on the screen. There is no high school GPA. The parent income does not disqualify you. So these are the four things you got to do to earn it. And then to maintain it, you got to continue to do the last bullet point, and you have to keep it 2.0. There is the power of Tennessee Promise. And again, it is for 3 years or 6 consecutive semesters or until you've earned the associate's degree or transferred out or left the school. All right. College for TN, we have a great big old website. I'm a big advocate of our website. I think it's great. There's a lot of things on there. But since we're talking about financial aid, the most critical one for you all watching this is going to be in the Money for College drop down. The second one on the left is called How to Fill Out the FAFSA. This is a great page. We have a few different short video clips on there. And so when the FAFSA goes live, if you want to attempt to do the FAFSA on your own, I recommend you do. I recommend families pull up our website and have kind of dual monitors or minimize the screens and have two different screens going on where you'll watch a clip of a section of the FAFSA, you'll do that section of the FAFSA. Watch the next clip, do the next section. Watch the next clip, do the next section. Rinse and repeat until you have submitted the FAFSA. It's just a great way to sit down and do it. It'll take you, I don't know, 30 minutes. And you can watch the clips while you're going through the sections of the FAFSA. But there's a whole lot of other great resources on there. I mentioned earlier about going to our website and looking at all the schools in one place. That's underneath college planning. So that's a great place for you to go and visit too. There is a lifestyle calculator on this same screen, so you can punch in all the things you think you deserve to have when you get a big boy or big girl job out there. Then you can see what it's going to cost you to actually afford it. Love that tool. So there's lots of things out there for people and students to use on our website, but the most critical one for you all is the How to Fill Out the FAFSA link on our site. All right. Pivoting towards FAFSA, you all are going to be completing the 25-26 FAFSA for this next year, because that's you're going to start school fall 25 into spring 26. You're going to be a freshman fall 25 into spring 26. That means you're going to be using your 2023 return information, your tax information. Okay. As I've already mentioned, the deadline is April the 15th. When you get ready to create your or do your FAFSA, one of the big changes that happened last year is this third point up here is that the FSA ID process takes longer than it always has, because now we must verify your identity. So if you want to do the FAFSA on December the 1st, I'm recommending you start it somewhere around November the 15th, because there's also going to be a Thanksgiving holiday break there at the end of November for a couple of days. And so 10 calendar days, or 5 business days, depending on when you submit the application. 10 calendar days is usually pretty good. The FSA ID process is open and available now. That system is up and running, and you can go to studentaid.gov to do that. I did forget to mention that the FAFSA goes live December the 1st. It's up there, number 1 on your screen. So while you can't start the FAFSA until December the 1st, you can create your FSA ID today, and we recommend that you do that. So who all needs FSA IDs? There's kind of 3 categories to break this down. So who needs an FSA ID? So to submit a FAFSA, every FAFSA requires a student FSA ID and a parent FSA ID. When I say FSA ID, that is a fancy way to say that the Department of Ed has created a term, FSA ID, that means your FAFSA username and password. So you can see at the top of this slide, FSA ID equals username password. Okay, so when I say FSA ID, that means it's one student username password, one student portion of the FAFSA, and one parent FSA ID username password, one parent portion of the FAFSA. Okay, so we're clear on that one. So there's kind of 3 categories of people when it comes to who needs to create FSA IDs. So parents, if your parents are married and filed jointly, it would only be one FSA ID, because those parents filed jointly, they can represent each other financially, and they can both sign the FAFSA on each other's behalf. So again, parents, if you're married, filed jointly, you'll need the student FSA ID of the portion of the FAFSA. You only just need one parent FSA ID or portion of the FAFSA. That's the first category. Second category is parents, if you're married, file any other way, you're going to need 2 FSA IDs, because you have 2 unconnected incomes, and the FAFSA will need to account for them because it's household income. All right. So parents, if you're married, file any other way, you will need to have 2 FSA IDs to account for both incomes, since you're living in a household together, and need to account for those. So that way it's one household income. All right. And then lastly, you've got families that there is divorce or separation and biological parents. So you may have, there's a whole bunch of different scenarios where you've got biological mom and dad divorced, never remarried, biological mom and dad divorced and both remarried, or one remarried. Who is the parent that should be for the record of the FAFSA? The FAFSA wants to use the parent of record to be, or wants the parent of record to be the parent that provides the most financial support to the student. So you can define and do that however you want to in your family, but just know it should be the parent that provides the most financial support to the student. In all likelihood, in this kind of scenario, when you've got divorce or separation and remarriages or non-remarriages, it typically will just be the student FSA ID and portion of the FAFSA, and one of the biological or step parents can create an FSA ID and do their portion of the FAFSA. So when biological dad, mom and dad remarry, so it can be biological mom or stepdad if they're married, filed jointly, because again, they're married, one income, one household income, and they provide the most support to the student. So it needs to be, you all decide who's going to be the parent of record, and that will be the parent that's used for the FAFSA. I do want to pause here and say, if you're a parent watching this, what do you do if you've previously had an FSA ID as a student recently, or you have an FSA ID because you have other parents? Just so you know, if you have previously created an FSA ID, you cannot create another one. The Social Security number is the unique qualifier for FSA IDs, and once you've created one, that is it. You can't create another one. So hopefully, if you previously created one, that sets you up for success, you can go back in and use the username and password you've saved. Or if you've forgotten your password or username, follow the links and be able to retrieve your username and password, then you're good to go. Um, if you previously have had an FSA ID and you cannot recall your username and password, or you cannot retrieve your username and password, you really only kind of have two options at that point. If you are married and file jointly, simply have your spouse create the FSA ID to represent the two of you for your student. If you're unmarried, and you're going to have to call the 800 number to talk to them. That's the 800-433-3243 number from the previous screen. That's the FAFSA number, because they're going to have to help you solve that problem. But if you're married and filed jointly, the spouse can represent you, create an FSA ID, and you also be able to move forward submitting the FAFSA. So as I mentioned, the FAFSA goes live December the 1st. If you want to attempt to do it on your own, highly recommend it. If you're going to do it, this screen kind of gives you the best recipe for success, and that is, we recommend the student both parent and the student have previously created their FSA IDs. Both the IDs have been verified. The student on or after December 1st logs into the FAFSA, and the student does his or her portion of the FAFSA first. In that portion of the FAFSA, the student will identify the parent of record for the FAFSA, the parent that's created the FSA ID. That student will invite that parent to participate in the FAFSA. Then the student will finish their part and submit the FAFSA and be done. In the meantime, that parent will receive an email invitation from the FAFSA that says, Johnny has indicated you as a potential submitter for the FAFSA. Click here to help Johnny with his FAFSA. And you'll click the link. It'll take you to your FAFSA. You log into it, and you can fill out the information required of you. And then when you submit your portion of the FAFSA, then the FAFSA is submitted as a whole. So again, the FAFSA cannot be submitted without the student doing a portion and a parent doing a portion. Each of them are done independently and separately of each other. The best recipe for the success, the student doing his or her portion first, inviting the parent, finishing their portion. A parent accepts the invitation, logs in, parent does his or her portion, parent submits their part, which means the FAFSA as a whole has been submitted. Okay. The FAFSA is required every year you're in school. So every year you're going to college. Every year you plan on using federal aid, state aid, any of those things, the FAFSA is going to be required. So get in the habit of doing it in the fall. Hopefully after this fall, the FAFSA will revert back to an October the 1st launch date, and you can get in the habit of doing the FAFSA in the fall. But just know that the FAFSA is required every year you're in school. Kind of moving towards the end. Lastly, if you are planning on going out of state, you want to go be a Georgia Bulldog, go be a Georgia Bulldog. Sure. You know, just know that Tennessee money cannot follow you to Georgia. Federal money can cross state lines, but state money cannot. So you can't go to Georgia and use the Hope Scholarship, and you've permanently forfeited Tennessee Promise. I will mention, with regards to the Hope Scholarship, one cool thing that we happen to have available to you in Tennessee is that if your Hope Scholarship at the time of graduation, high school graduation, and you do decide to go out of state your freshman year, you go to Western Kentucky your first year, and you do fine. It wasn't the right fit, and you decide to come home. As long as you have maintained the minimum GPA requirement for the Hope Scholarship, which is 2.75 as a freshman, when you come back to Tennessee, and if you go to a Hope Scholarship institution, you can begin using Hope again. You're still eligible at that point. There are kind of two stipulations. If you go to out-of-state school, it has to be a regionally accredited institution. So Western Kentucky is a great example. Georgia is a great example. You can't go to, Bob's Boot Factory in West Virginia and come back and then transfer back to Tennessee. If you go to an uncredited or institution, then that's lost. You've lost the Hope Scholarship. So just be aware, if you go to an accredited institution and you come back and you've got the 2.75, you can begin using the Hope Scholarship money again at that point. The last cool thing about the Hope Scholarship, and this is kind of where I'm done as I get to my contact information screen, is if when a lot of you students are taking dual enrollment classes, AP classes, you have more and more college credits under your belt by the time you graduate. You've got 15, 18, 21, upwards of 30 plus hours, some of you, in Hope Scholarship or in college credit money at that point. The state passed a law last year that your Hope Scholarship. If you graduate early using the Hope Scholarship, and you still have semesters remaining, 1, 2, 3 semesters remaining on your Hope Scholarship, you can now use that money towards your first advanced degree, so your master's degree. So if you're interested, you can do that. You must immediately enroll in the first available master's program. So, like if you graduate in May, you got to start in the fall. If you graduate in December and some schools don't have master programs that begin until the following fall, that's fine. You can wait until the fall to begin that master's program. But if you delay beyond the natural entrance of those programs, then you'll forfeit that money. But if you're interested and you'll have semesters left of your Hope Scholarship money, we highly recommend you take advantage of those remaining semesters and use that towards your first advanced degree. So that's it and about financial aid that we're going to cover in this presentation. I'll say that I realize we have covered a whole lot, and I go pretty fast. You're free to watch this at your convenience. Here's my contact information. You're welcome to reach back out to me at your convenience to be able to contact me for any follow-up clarification. So I hope that this has given you the information you need to kind of be better prepared for school next fall. And I wish you all the best moving forward. Thank you so much for spending a few minutes with me, and feel free again to reach out to me if you need anything at help. Have a great day.